Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Did you know that Gibson, once upon a time, made a solid body 335? That's what we're going to talk about today. So these things are quite mysterious because they only lasted a very few short years. Depending on which version of this guitar you're talking about, we're talking at max about 3.5, 4 years. So naturally, a lot of people don't even know these things exist. I remember the first time that I saw this thing, I was like, what? I would have never have guessed that. But here it is, the strange solid body 335. Now it's important to note that this is not called an ES335S, it is just 335S because it's no longer an electric Spanish guitar. It just kind of has that vague body shape. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a 335 to compare this to today, but I do have a kind of similar guitar, which is my Gibson Crest. So you can tell these are definitely a little bit smaller than an ES335, but vaguely similar, just a little bit shrunken down, but it's still got 6 strings. It still has the regular Gibson style headstock on here with a few changes. Let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the history of the 335S. Alright, so one of my favorite budget model guitars is a Les Paul. Those were first introduced in 1978, and then in 1979 they also continued production, but the SG came out. They were walnut-bodied guitars. The Paul was actually slimmer than a Les Paul. It didn't have a top, it had some comfort carves, just like we're gonna see on this one in a minute. But then in 1980, both the Paul and the SG ended up getting rebranded as Firebrands. They also at this time introduced a Deluxe model, which featured a mahogany body and exotic finishes. And when I say exotic, we're talking like gloss finishes. Some of them could be as cool as Silverburst, other ones they're just a natural gloss clear coat. So it was seen as a more premium feature. But it was around the same time that those guys came out that this thing came out. So it's kind of like a sister model to those, but it's completely different at the same time. So you can see here that this one is labeled Firebrand 335S Standard. This was considered the lowest end variation. However, on the vintage market today, it's actually the rarest one because it was only in production from 1980 till 1981. So about a year, give or take, whenever they kind of started and stopped production. I don't really have exact dates on that. But besides the standard, they also had one called a custom and a deluxe. Now this is one of those weird times in Gibson history where the custom ranks below the deluxe, but hey, that's just how it is. So now let's talk about the differences between them. The standard has a maple body and a maple neck. When Gibson reissued these things in 2011, this is the one that they kind of inspired it off of because they chose to do the maple. And I've reviewed and documented all of these before, and I kind of got that wrong. I didn't realize that the standards were maple at that time, because does it look like maple? Maybe not at first glance, but once you actually have seen them all together, you kind of understand that, yeah, that's definitely a lighter color than most. But special features for this one that you'll see are these very unique tuners on here. You can see it's got those pearloid tips, kind of like what the Spotlight Specials have, but they're a little bit different. These ones are a little bit more opaque. But these ones, I believe, feature Shaw PAFs, so we'll actually have to tear this apart on the workbench to verify that. But it's just a pretty solid guitar. But when you go up to the custom, here's what changes. It still looks the same. You get the exact same style tuners, you still get the Fire-branded headstock. The rosewood fretboard stays the same, but they change your body material to mahogany. And our pickups are now upgraded to Dirty Fingers pickups, and we get a coil split switch down here. Dirty Fingers are the pickups that were stock in most 335 style guitars at this point in time, so I could see how that would be seen as a real plus, but you know, nowadays a Shaw PAF will be worth a little bit more than original Dirty Fingers, so it's kind of funny how occasionally time will make other things more valuable than others. You'll also see that those guys get a TP6 fine-tuning tailpiece to make them a little fancier. But then when you step up to the Deluxe, that's when you get a full-on gloss finish. Now you might be saying, hey, isn't this a gloss finish? This would have started life more so as a satin finish. It's just been played into a gloss over the years. Because there's certain areas where you can kind of feel that, yeah, that used to be satin, especially on the backside of the headstock. You can check out this new old stock Marauder I documented once to kind of understand what these things actually felt like brand new. But yes, the Deluxe, it also had the mahogany body, mahogany neck. They introduced the full gloss finishes. You can find some really interesting ones like Silver Burst. There's also wine red and natural ones that you can find. They also had the TP6 tailpiece with the Dirty Fingers pickups, the coil splits. Pretty much the only thing different there is the gloss finish with exotic colors, and you get a regular headstock veneer on them. And of course, your truss rod covers will be different. And most importantly, those ones have a bound ebony fretboard. So there's quite the vast differences between each and every single one of these models. It's kind of hard to pinpoint every single small one unless you had them side by side. And unfortunately, in my old reviews, I got some of this information wrong. It's always been one of my biggest regrets of my career, so I wanted to make this video to kind of help clear up some confusion about this relatively unknown model. But if you'd like to see any of those other ones in actions, I now have a video of the reissue and all 3 vintage originals. Now personally, how do I feel about these guitars? They've always been slightly more valuable than a VSG or the Paul simply due to their rarity, but I've always preferred a the Paul anyways. But if you really like that whole double cut shape, I mean, this is before the double cut Les Paul standards ever came out, so you could argue it's a semi-what precursor to those guys, just with the 335S body shape. You can see they do have all the comfort carves along the edge here, so it's a relatively comfortable guitar, because they also have a belly cut on the back right there. So these are kind of weird, obscure guitars, mainly for the collector, but if you don't mind paying a slight premium to have something that's a little bit more rare, or maybe you had one of these things growing up, so you kind of have an affinity for them like that, that's kind of who these guitars are for. So you can certainly get more bang for your buck on a different vintage model, but if you want something a little bit different, these are kind of quirky and cool. So let's go ahead and throw this thing on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs before we get to that playing demo. Inside the 335S standard, let's take a look at this. Now, to me, these do look like Tim Shaw PAFs. One's marked August 1st, 1980, and the other's August 4th, 1980. So these are kind of like transitional period T-tops into Tim Shaws. Because we got the brass screws, but we don't yet have the Tim Shaw ink stamps. But if you look at the top, these do not have T's on the bobbins, so they are not T-tops. I'm getting 7.52 in the bridge, which is what we'd want to see, and about 7.9. So yeah, I would say that falls within the range. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see that, but you can just barely see the white spacers in there. So yes, I do believe these are Tim Shaw PAFs. So it looks like there have been a few slight modifications to this particular one. Like everything is still original minus a few pieces, but other things have been added. Like somebody shielded off our pickup cavities here with the stick-on shielding stuff, and they've added wires all through that, and then that comes off somewhere into here. Is it a modification? Yes, but it's completely reversible. But inside our cavities anyways, you can see the maple body. You can see where some of the stain kind of went into the cavities. But nothing too fancy to look at there. You can tell whoever played this really liked low action because the strings were like touching the pickup and kind of rubbing away the bobbin up there. That's kind of cool to see. Looks like the neck pickup is in a little bit cleaner shape. As far as our bridge, it's the regular Schaller made one, made in Germany. You can see right there. And the bridge is just a regular one as well. I have suspicions that this one has been replaced at one point in time since the casting mark goes to the edges. And as far as our controls, just 2 volumes, 2 tones, 1 for each pickup, and a 3-way toggle switch down here. So we'll just kind of go along here so you can see some of the nicks and dings and the comfort cuts that they gave. So this one here gives you more of an illusion of a big horn, but then pretty much right away after that, it comes into this comfort carve right here. That way, no matter what style you like to play this thing, like say you want to do classical style and this is all hoisted up while you're sitting, your arm can rest right here and it still has a little bit of a comfort cut. It's not like just one small area. It's just completely along the edge of the body. It also kind of helps bring out the 335-esque body shape here. But then it just kind of abruptly ends and you get a straight line until it starts again right here. So kind of an interesting body shape. This is one of the cleaner ones I've ever seen. Now being a satin finish originally, it's very prone to turning into this semi-gloss. You can also find areas of wear in the finish, like right there, somebody liked to rest their pinky and it would rub. That's why there's a little bit of finish missing right there. But usually these things are much worse. Like you'll just see giant patches here, there, down here, especially on the neck, just completely worn off. So when I say this one's clean, I mean, all things considered, it's very clean. But there's definitely some light impressions, nicks and dings. You can see the seam line kind of showing right there. I think this actually has more than 2 pieces though. But a lot of people miss that these things are maple bodies because the finish is called walnut. So a lot of people just think they're walnut. But moving on from our maple body to our maple neck, we have a rosewood fretboard with 22 frets. I just cleaned this one up so it's nice looking. And you get dot inlays on this, so kind of like a 335 dot. But notice these are real mother of pearl inlays. Kind of makes them look nice. Maybe not as nice if they would have bound the fretboard, but you do get a first fret inlay as well, which is kind of cool. Now, as far as the condition of the frets, you can see there's definitely some wear on that first fret there, but it's the second fret that shows the most wear, so definitely a cowboy chord player, because by the third fret, I mean, it's still got a little bit, but like 4th, 5th, and 6th, it's negligible. And then all the way up the rest of the fretboard, I mean, very minor fret wear, so this was mainly a chords player guitar, and the standard nut of the era. But as far as specs, 1.66 at the nut width, 2.02 by the 12th. First fret neck depth 0.86 and 0.99 by the 12th. Now that might sound big, but it's definitely like a rounded C-shaped neck profile. This is our first fret, this is the 12th fret. Definitely a rounded C-shaped neck. But moving on to our headstock, I really love this. You never see a bare maple headstock like this. So no black veneer, no silk screen, nothing like that, just the Gibson Firebrand right there, which is pretty cool. And once again, we can see our special tuners on this one. And our truss rod is in perfect shape. And there's a close-up of our truss rod cover, Firebrand 335S standard. But moving on to the back, it's got the same control style as like the Paul or a 50th anniversary Les Paul. It's just this big thing. They put it on the back, they can fit everything that they need to in. And this one still has the original pots, but the wiring has been messed with just a little bit. This whole thing has been added. It looks like another capacitor with a resistor, so I'm not exactly sure what that's doing in the circuit. And they've also replaced these capacitors, because normally you just have that regular ceramic one crossing from here to there. So there's definitely a little bit done to this, but it's still the original parts. It's just they've messed with the wiring. It could be restored back to stock if you knew what you were doing, but I'm going to leave well enough alone. And it looks like that grounding wire comes off and comes onto here. But the output is located on the side, and you get our strap buttons in our regular locations, but they have been replaced. So back here you can see that seam line that I was talking about before too. And there's like a small smudge in the finish or something. I was unable to polish that one out, but the one that was up here, I was able to get that out when I did my cleaning job. But again, you got a nice little comfort cut back here. So not perfect condition, but very good all in general. We'll take a moment to capture our sides here as well. The only major wear I'm kind of seeing is towards the bottom right here. You get some nicks, dings, and scratches from whatever strap was on here at one point in time. And on the other side, looks like maybe some dings right there because somebody couldn't find the output jack when they were trying to plug in. Now you can feel where the body has slightly shrunk, so the neck is just a hair larger. If it really bugged you, you could sand it smooth and then refinish that area, but I'd just let it be. It's not hurting the guitar. It doesn't make it play any different. It's just when you're picking it up, sometimes you can feel it. But look at the back of this neck. Hardly any finish wear at all. I'm sure if we, get it under blacklight, we might see small areas. But normally it's a very visible, the finish has been worn off of it. Just a few light impressions on this one. And it is a 3-piece maple neck. With a volute back here. And there is our Gibson tuners once again. This one dates to 1980, 221st day of the year, 585 in production in the Nashville plant. All said and done, restrung and cleaned, it weighs just under 9 pounds, 8 pounds, 15.4 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Okay, let's go ahead and run through these tones. I'm really liking the neck pickup on this thing. It's got that classic vintage tone, whereas the bridge pickup is really bright. So let's go ahead and start with our bridge pickup here and just kind of cycle through them on some basic chords. really works well for kind of funkier stuff. So does that neck pickup. I like that. Now let's try some distortion. Now that we know everything about the 335S standard, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Now, it's been a couple of years since I had the other ones, but I've got to say this is so far my favorite one because, you know, Dirty Fingers pickups, they're nice, but they're not necessarily my favorite. So I would much prefer a little bit more vintage style PAF, and that's exactly what this has. The maple body is interesting. I think it gives it something a little bit more unique as compared to the other ones. However, you know, most people in the Gibson realm do prefer mahogany bodies and mahogany necks. But hey, I'm not much of a traditionalist. I've always liked maple on guitars. And that also means you could technically find a really heavily figured one of these just because, you know, it's always random. Now, how does it feel to play? It's nice. It's not the most acoustically resonant guitar in the world. But then again, being a solid body, I don't think you're really expecting that. It is comfortable to play, surprisingly enough. I mean, it doesn't matter how you prefer to hold your guitar. As I was saying earlier, you got a comfort cut pretty much everywhere. It really likes to butt up right against you. It's comfortable. And you can get all the way up here. I mean, the 22nd fret, I mean, it's a bit of a stretch. But as far as all this stuff goes, the double cutaways, this is nice enough. They scoop it out just a hair there to help you get even further. It's a comfortable guitar to play, I would say. And since this is a used guitar, let's go ahead and talk through the blacklight test. So you can see somebody's been playing it a lot right here. There is a little bit of sweat absorption. That's why it glows a little bit more than other locations. But our pickups are glowing the way I would expect to see. Everything's looking good as far as the finish goes there. A little bit of edge wear, as I was kind of alluding to, by a strap or something, just kind of worn through that thin satin finish. It's kind of hard to see that in regular lighting, but blacklight definitely helps that show up here. But as far as the rest of the edges of the instrument, actually in pretty darn good shape. Ooh, looks like there's a area right there where it's rubbing against you. Yeah, that's exactly where it wants to go. You can see that it's kind of rubbed some of that clear coat off. Definitely not hard to do on one of these things. Even just playing it, it feels like it's kind of starting to wear in. It's a very nice guitar. But I'm surprised, not a lot of wear on the neck, except for just this little patch. But you can see a little bit more of sweat absorption right there. Again, cowboy cord area, right where all the fret wear is. So that definitely holds true to what I was expecting to see on this. No breaks, cracks, or repairs to talk about. And looks like we're just in pretty good shape on this thing. So a very nice example of a 335S standard. So if you happen to find one of these at a vintage store, you might as well try it out, or somebody's selling it on Craigslist. There might be other guitars that are a better value for the money, but they're kind of rare, they're kind of obscure, quirky. I definitely enjoyed this, so I would suggest checking one of these out if you happen to find one. Alright, Troglodytes, thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.